Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're standing at the precipice of what might actually be, well, probably the most pivotal moment in sitcom history.
It really is a massive turning point.
Yeah, because, usually when you talk about long-running shows, there's this tension, there's this engine that keeps the whole thing running year after year.
Right, the classic will they or won't they dynamic.
Exactly. And for Frasier, that engine was entirely built on Niles and Daphne. I mean, it ran for 7 years. 7 full seasons of near misses, secret longing.
Smelling her hair when people weren't looking.
Smelling the hair, yes. It's the classic romantic tension that completely defines the genre.
Oh, absolutely. It's the moonlighting curse. It's the Ross and Rachel dynamic. It is the fuel in the tank for the writers.
Right. But today, we're diving into Season 8. And Season 8 is unique because it's the season where the show finally just, well, it looked you, the audience, right in the eye and said, okay, they did.
They actually went through with it.
They did. The wedding happened, the wedding didn't happen, and they ran off together instead. So the question we are exploring today is, what happens the morning after the fairy tale ends?
What happens when the engine stops revving and you actually have to put the car in drive?
Exactly that. And it's a fascinating problem for a writer's room, isn't it? You've spent nearly a decade building up to this massive climax, and now you have to deal with the fallout.
Usually, this is exactly where a show jumps the shark.
Yeah.
But if you look at the source material we have today, which is a really comprehensive breakdown of all 24 episodes of Season 8, airing from October 2000 to May 2001, it's clear this wasn't just some victory lap.
No, not at all.
It was a season of total deconstruction.
It really was. And just a quick visual note for the diehard fans out there. Our source points out a really subtle but significant change right off the bat in episode 1. This is the season where the opening title card changed colors.
Right. The color palette shifted.
Yeah, for 7 years you had those very specific hues, but in Season 8, it shifts to a light green. It's like a fresh coat of paint for a completely new era.
A fresh coat of paint, yeah. But underneath that paint, there was a lot of heavy structural repair work going on. That green really signifies a reset. We aren't in the chase anymore. We are in the reality.
So here's our mission for this deep dive. We are going to unpack how the show handled the immediate, very messy aftermath of Daphne leaving Donny at the altar.
It gets so messy.
It really does. Then we're going to tackle the incredibly controversial and, let's be honest, slightly bizarre weight gain arc that they used to explain Jane Leeves' real-life pregnancy.
That whole arc is a masterclass in how sitcoms used to handle real-world logistics. For better or worse, we really need to parse through it because it says so much about the era and the character dynamics.
Oh, absolutely. And then we're going to look at how the show pivoted to a deeply psychological deconstruction of Niles and Daphne's relationship, moving them from this fantasy to reality.
And you can't forget Frasier himself.
Right. Finally, we'll cover how Frasier spirals into a full-blown midlife identity crisis amidst all this supposed happiness surrounding him.
It is the ultimate crisis of the observer. When everyone else around you is moving forward, where does that leave the central character? It's a really profound question for a comedy to ask.
Precisely. So let's just jump right in. The season opens with a two-parter, and the dish ran away with the spoon. When you last saw them at the end of Season 7, Niles and Daphne were fleeing the wedding in Martin's Winnebago.
The Great Escape.
Right. It's the classic romantic sunset ending. But Season 8 starts, and reality hits them pretty hard, doesn't it?
It hits them immediately.
Yeah.
And this is where the show makes a very smart, very brave narrative decision. In a standard rom-com, they drive off into the sunset, the credits roll, and you just assume they live happily ever after on a beach somewhere sipping drinks.
But here, they only get to the end of the road.
Exactly. They literally have to turn the Winnebago around.
I love that image so much. The physical U-turn.
It's a perfect metaphor. You cannot just drive away from your life. They realize they have no clothes, they have no plan, and they are driving a giant recreational vehicle. They have to go back to Seattle.
And the life they left behind in Seattle is angry. Specifically, Donny and Mel are furious.
And rightfully so.
Yeah.
The show does not shy away from the fact that Niles and Daphne caused a massive amount of collateral damage.
And what I love about the notes on these first few episodes is how litigious it gets. Donny Douglas isn't just some jilted groom who cries into his beer. He is a lawyer. He's a shark.
So what does he do? He goes completely scorched earth. He sues Daphne for breach of contract.
Which is wild.
But technically, if you think about the wedding deposits, and the verbal agreement to marry, it is a cold but legally sound move in his mind.
But here's the kicker that I absolutely love. He doesn't just sue Daphne, he adds Frasier to the suit.
Yes. This is the alienation of affection toward.
Right, alienation of affection.
It's this old common law concept, rarely used nowadays, but it fits perfectly into the plot here. It's the legal idea that a third party actively interfered with a marriage or an engagement.
And Donny knows Frasier was the one who spilled the beans. He knows Frasier facilitated this whole romantic getaway, so he drags Frasier right into court.
It completely grounds this high-flying romantic trope in the gritty reality of American litigation. You expect a tearful confrontation, but instead you get a subpoena.
It reframes the whole romance as a legal tort. That is so perfectly Frasier.
It forces the characters to literally pay for their happiness. And then, of course, there is Mel, Niles' wife of, 3 days?
Yeah, barely a weekend. And Mel's reaction is even more calculated than Donnie's. She doesn't scream and shout.
No, she is icy. You have to remember, Mel is a plastic surgeon. She lives in high society. For her, the pain isn't just the heartbreak of losing Niles. It is the public humiliation.
She cannot be the woman who was dumped on her honeymoon.
Exactly. That destroys her social standing. So she agrees to the divorce, but there is a major catch.
A really nasty catch.
She forces Niles to play the devoted husband in public for a set period of time. She wants to control the narrative. Niles has to attend these parties, host dinners, and pretend to absolutely adore her until she decides she is done with him and can publicly dump him.
Which creates this incredible farce dynamic where Niles and Daphne, who have finally confessed their love after 7 years, still have to hide.
They're dating in secret all over again.
Right. It keeps that forbidden fruit dynamic alive just a little bit longer. There is that episode, The Bad Son, where they just want a simple romantic dinner on the roof of the Elliott Bay Tower.
Right. They just want to watch a meteor shower together. It's supposed to be this magical first official date.
And Frasier is there too, trying to woo a woman named Miranda. And in classic farce fashion, the door to the room closes, it locks. Niles and Daphne get locked out.
It is the universe literally conspiring to keep them apart just a little bit longer. It feels like the show is saying they haven't earned the happy ending yet. They have to suffer through the cold, the legal bills, and the social awkwardness first.
Speaking of legal bills, we definitely have to talk about legal tender love and care. This episode highlights Frasier's character flaws so perfectly.
Oh, it is a peak ethical collapse for Frasier.
So Frasier hires a lawyer to fight Donnie's lawsuit. He hires Abby Michaels, played by Terry Polo. She's high-powered, she's expensive, she's a superstar attorney.
And in typical Frasier fashion, he is immediately attracted to her intellect and her power.
And he starts dating her.
Which blurs every single possible professional line. But look at the irony here, and this is something the source material really highlights. He hires her to save them money and save their reputation. She does good work. But when he finally gets her bill,
he completely freaks out.
He takes it so personally. He feels he is being overcharged because they are dating. He is sleeping with the woman, but he's incredibly resentful of her hourly rate.
It is so petty. It just shows that Frasier cannot separate his professional worth from his personal relationships. He is looking at the invoice thinking, wait a minute, didn't that dinner we had count as a retainer?
It's hilarious. Yeah. And ultimately, it all resolves in this very anticlimactic way where Donnie just drops the suit because he meets someone else.
He gets engaged again, which is a funny little commentary on the rebound. But it wraps up the legal threat so the show can move on to the next big obstacle. And the next obstacle wasn't a character choice at all. It was biology.
Yes. We have to unpack this because this is the massive elephant in the room for season 8. Jane Leeves, the actress playing Daphne, was pregnant in real life. Visibly pregnant.
Now, sitcoms have a few ways to handle this. You know, they can hide the actress behind giant purses, laundry baskets, kitchen counters.
The Seinfeld approach with Julia Louis-Dreyfus. You just put her behind a couch or holding a box for an entire season.
Exactly. Or they can just write the pregnancy into the show, make the character pregnant. But the writers here decided, no, Daphne and Niles literally just got together. They haven't even really dated yet. We cannot have them having a baby right now.
It would completely derail the timeline. It would rush things way too fast.
So they went with option C, the weight gain arc.
This is, well, looking back, it's certainly a choice. They decided to explain Jane Leeves' physical changes by saying Daphne has developed a compulsive overeating disorder due to the immense stress of the new relationship and the ongoing lawsuits.
Right, and it's a storyline that is quite controversial today. It definitely relies on some broad stereotypes and fat jokes that feel a bit uncomfortable now. But strictly from a narrative mechanics perspective, we have to look at why they did it this way.
Right. And this source makes a really brilliant point here. The joke actually isn't just that Daphne is eating. The real joke is Niles.
This is critical. The joke is that Niles is completely blind.
He literally cannot see it.
He is so enamored, he is so completely wrapped up in the honeymoon phase that his brain just filters out reality.
Everyone else, Frasier, Martin, Ross, they are all staring in absolute disbelief. They see Daphne eating entire lasagnas.
Yeah.
They see the drastic physical change. But Niles, he looks at her and only sees the exact same goddess he has worshipped from afar for 7 years.
It validates the idea that he is not in love with the reality of Daphne yet. He is in love with the image, the projection in his own head.
Exactly. It is confirmation bias on steroids.
Yeah.
He literally only sees what he wants to see.
And it all culminates in the episode Hungry Heart. This is the slapstick peak of the whole arc. Daphne gains so much weight, which was achieved with a massive prosthetic suit by this point, obviously, that she falls down in the apartment.
And she physically cannot get up.
Right. And it takes Frasier, Niles, and Martin, all 3 crane men, working together to hoist her back onto her feet.
And that is the exact moment the spell breaks for Niles. The physical reality finally becomes undeniable. It's a very brutal, physical way to pop his bubble. You could ignore the snacking, you could ignore the clothes getting tighter, but you cannot ignore gravity.
And then, poof, Jane Leeves goes on actual maternity leave. In the universe of the show, they explain it by having Daphne go to a weight spa to get healthy. So she completely disappears for several episodes from It Takes Two to Tangle, all the way through Forgotten but Not Gone.
Which leaves Niles totally alone again, in a way. But this absence perfectly sets up what I think is the intellectual centerpiece of the entire season. The moment when Daphne comes back.
Yes. Episode 19, Daphne Returns. This isn't just some standard welcome back episode. This is where the show puts the entire Niles and Daphne relationship on the operating table and just dissects it.
It is. And it starts with a major confrontation. Daphne returns, looking like herself again. Jane Leeves had the baby. She's back on set.
Yeah.
But she brings back a massive revelation from her therapist at the spa, Gloria. She tells Niles that the weight gain wasn't actually just about food. It was a physical manifestation of her deep insecurity about their relationship.
Which incredibly hurts Niles. He is standing there thinking, I worship this woman. I treat her like a literal queen. How on earth can she be insecure?
Exactly. He thinks his total devotion is the ultimate compliment. But Frasier intervenes. And Frasier, tapping into his skills as an actual psychiatrist for once, identifies the real core problem. He suggests that Daphne feels immense pressure to live up to the fantasy that Niles has built.
The 7 years of fantasy.
Think about it from her perspective. Niles didn't fall in love with Daphne by dating her normally. He fell in love with her from afar. He smelled her hair. He wrote sonnets about her. He created an absolutely idealized, flawless version of her in his head. Perfection. The goddess.
And no real woman can compete with a goddess.
Not even the woman herself. Being worshipped is actually terrifying because it means you aren't allowed to have a single flaw. If you make a mistake, you shatter the pedestal.
And the show does something really cool technically here to prove this exact point to Niles.
The flashbacks.
Yes, they use chroma key green screen technology. They take the current 2001 era Niles and Frasier, and they visually insert them into actual scenes from the early seasons. They literally walk around inside their own past memories.
It is a brilliant staging device. They act as ghosts in their own history. They revisit these moments where Niles thought he was being so incredibly romantic, and they analyze them with fresh clinical eyes.
And what do they see when they look back?
They see Niles completely ignoring who Daphne actually is as a person. They see him projecting his own desperate needs onto her. Niles realizes in that moment that he wasn't really seeing Daphne. He was seeing an escape hatch from his miserable, suffocating marriage to Maris. He was seeing a savior.
There is that moment where Frasier tells him, you were afraid to embrace the real flawed Daphne because if the relationship failed, you would lose the dream that sustained you for 7 years. That's heavy for a sitcom.
It is the absolute deep dive moment of the series. It pivots the entire show's trajectory. The central question changes from, will he get the girl, to can he actually love the real person? And for a sitcom in its 8th season to do that kind of heavy psychological character work, that is seriously impressive. It moves the show away from pure farce and into a dramedy about genuine human connection.
It totally validates the entire season's struggle, because if they hadn't done this, if they had just let them be happy together without addressing the 7 years of borderline stalking behavior, it wouldn't have felt earned.
Exactly. It would have felt hollow. But while Niles is going through this massive deconstruction of his romantic life, Frasier is going through a deconstruction of, well, Frasier.
Yeah. It feels like Frasier spends this entire season just looking in the mirror and really not liking the guy staring back at him. While everyone else around him is coupling up or growing, Frasier is just spiraling.
It is his definitive midlife crisis season. He suddenly feels completely obsolete.
And it really kicks off in the episode Frasier's Edge.
Right, the episode with the Lifetime Achievement Award.
Which, by all metrics, should be a great thing. He is getting the Stephen R. Schaefer Lifetime Achievement Award. He should be sitting on top of the world.
He really should be. But then he receives a note. A very simple, short congratulatory note from his old Harvard mentor, Dr. William Tewksbury.
Played beautifully by the incredible Rene Auberjonois.
Yes, phenomenal casting. And the note simply says, "You must be very proud."
Notice it doesn't say, "I am proud of you."
Exactly. You must be very proud. It is a cold statement of fact, not a warm expression of pride from a mentor. And Frasier just spirals over this. He becomes totally obsessed with the subtext. He dissects the grammar of the sentence. He actually goes to visit Tewksbury in his office, fully convinced there is some deep psychological lesson to be learned, some withholding of paternal approval that he needs to unlock to find peace.
And the reality of the note.
The reality is totally crushing. His secretary wrote it. Tewksbury barely even remembers Frasier. There was absolutely no subtext. But the fact that Frasier looks so desperately for it reveals his own massive internal emptiness. He realizes he has this shiny award, but does he actually have the substance? He feels like a total fraud. He feels he hasn't done the real gritty work of psychiatry. He's just a guy talking on the radio.
That recurring theme of substance versus style or career versus reality just keeps popping up for her. Like he tries to pivot away from career anxiety to being a better father in Cranes Unplugged.
Which is a very painful episode to watch for any parent of a teenager.
Oh my God, yes. Frederick is 13 now, and Frasier decides to bring him out to the woods. Frasier has this incredibly romantic, Thoreau-esque idea of camping. He wants to identify birds, have deep philosophical talks about life, and impart fatherly wisdom around a fire.
And Frederick just wants to play his Game Boy and watch MTV. It is the brutal clash of Frasier's fantasy of fatherhood directly against the reality of a modern teenage son. And Frasier drags Martin along too, so you get this hilarious three-generation disconnect.
And Frasier tries so hard, he's practically forcing the bonding down their throats.
He is performing fatherhood. He isn't actually listening to Frederick. He is just trying to manufacture a memory. He wants the credit for the meaningful moment far more than he actually wants the moment itself. It's just another example of Frasier trying to design his life the exact same way he designs his living room and getting completely furious when the real people don't match the furniture.
And then there's the envy. We definitely have to talk about Frasier's jealousy this season. It is rampant.
It is the green-eyed monster season for him. He is jealous of literally everyone.
Let's look at the Great Crane Robbery. This premise is so funny. Frasier mentors a tech billionaire.
Todd Peterson, played by Alan Tudyk. He is this young, incredibly wealthy, but totally unrefined computer genius. And Frasier decides to take him under his wing to teach him class. He desperately wants to be the Henry Higgins to this tech bro.
But Todd doesn't just learn from Frasier, he copies him.
He consumes his entire identity. He buys Frasier's exact apartment layout. He buys the exact same car. He buys all his clothes. He essentially just clones Frasier's entire brand.
It's single white female, but with high-end, mid-century modern furniture.
It is identity theft masquerading as flattery. And it drives Frasier absolutely crazy because suddenly his unique brand, his exquisite taste, his discernment, it isn't unique anymore. It is being mass-produced by a billionaire with unlimited funds. If anyone can just buy Frasier's personality, then Frasier isn't inherently special.
And then comes the ultimate indignity, hooping cranes.
This is peak classic sibling rivalry.
Frasier gets great tickets to a Sonics game. He takes Niles and Martin. Now, Niles, who knows absolutely nothing about sports, he probably thinks a dunk is something you solely do with a biscotti and coffee, gets randomly selected from the crowd for the halftime half-court shot contest.
And against all laws of physics, he makes it.
Complete and total fluke.
A total accident. But the crowd goes absolutely wild. Niles wins a new truck. He becomes this instant local celebrity. They call him Half-Court Crane.
And Frasier, you just have to look at his face in that episode.
He physically cannot handle it. He cannot stand that Niles, of all people, is getting mass adulation for something athletic. It perfectly highlights Frasier's desperate need to be the special one in the family. He always wants to be the mentor, the star, the famous radio host. But this entire season, everyone else keeps stealing his spotlight.
Even his path idols let him down. There is that episode, The Show Must Go Off, with Derek Jacobi.
Jackson Headley, the legendary actor who first introduced Frasier to the magic of Shakespeare. Frasier completely worships the ground this man walks on.
So Frasier and Niles try to revive his struggling career, genuinely thinking he is this lost titan of the stage. They fully fund and produce a one-man show for him, and then they finally see him actually act on stage.
And he is terrible.
Mm.
He's an absolute ham. He overacts, he groans, he pauses dramatically. He is awful.
It's just disappointment after disappointment for Frasier all season. His mentor doesn't care about him. His son is totally bored by him. His billionaire protege hollows out his identity, and his childhood idol cannot act.
It isolates him completely. And that deep isolation is really key to understanding exactly where he ends up in the finale. But before we get to the finale, we should probably look at the people around him. The supporting cast had some really interesting grounding journeys this season that flesh out the world.
Yeah, let's talk about Roz. She gets a pretty cool professional storyline and docudrama.
She decides she wants to make a documentary about space. She's really asserting her independence as a producer outside of Frasier's shadow.
And Frasier naturally just assumes he is the only choice to narrate it.
Because he has the voice. He genuinely thinks he is doing her a massive favor by offering. But he is totally overbearing. He immediately tries to take over the entire production, directing her, rewriting the script, giving notes. So Roz does the unthinkable. She fires him.
Good for her, honestly.
It's a fantastic moment for Roz. She finally draws a hard professional boundary.
Mm.
And who does she manage to replace him with?
John Glenn. The actual literal astronaut John Glenn.
Appearing as herself. It is such a great take that to Frasier's ego. You think you're the ultimate expert on space just because you have a deep baritone voice. Well, here's a man who literally walked in space.
I love that scene so much. Frasier is just sitting there in the booth, fuming, having to listen to an American hero do the exact job he thought only he was qualified for. And Roz also has that fling with Luke, played by Gary Cole, the boat guy.
Right, the dropout who just sailed around the world. It is an interesting dynamic because Frasier actually really likes Luke. He wants to be best friends with Luke. He sees Luke as this carefree, adventurous spirit that he desperately wishes he could be. But when Roz inevitably breaks up with him, Frasier loses a friend too. It reinforces this sad reality that Frasier's social life is often just collateral damage of his friends' dating lives.
Speaking of dating lives, Martin Crane is actually getting quite a bit of action this season.
He really is. Martin is having a total renaissance. He becomes quite the player in season 8. In It Takes Two to Tangle, he is actively juggling two very wealthy women, Penelope and Estelle.
He is pulling a classic Frasier.
He is learning from his sons or maybe just mocking them, but it shows Martin actually enjoying his life. He isn't just the grumpy old dad glued to the terrible chair anymore. He has real agency. However, the show also makes sure to give him a very somber, grounded moment in A Day in May.
That episode really stood out in the notes, the parole hearing.
Yes. It is a B-plot, and it is very quiet. There is no laugh track here. Martin puts on his suit and attends the parole hearing of the man who shot him years ago. The exact man who put him in that chair and gave him that cane.
You don't see a lot of sitcom jokes in a scene like that?
No, none. He just sits there in the sterile room. He delivers a brief statement. It serves to remind you of the deep history and the physical pain that Martin carries every single day. It grounds the character so beautifully amidst all the high society farce. You realize that underneath the grumpy exterior and the Ballantine beer drinking, there is a man who suffered a massive, life-changing trauma.
It's those exact little touches that keep the show from just floating away into pure cartoon territory. And we also have to mention one more guest star who I think brings a really interesting, critical perspective on the class dynamics of the show. Victor Garber.
Yes. Ferguson.
The butler. In the episode Taking Liberties, Frasier hires a proper, traditional English butler. And Ferguson is great. He's incredibly efficient. He anticipates Frasier's every single snobby need. But he delivers a very serious warning to Niles, doesn't he?
He does. He's the only character who spots the potential fatal flaw between Niles and Daphne from a strictly class-based perspective. He sees the upper-class master and the working-class servant dynamic for what it historically is.
And Ferguson, coming from a long, proud line of serving-class butlers, basically looks at Niles and says, "This does not work."
He tells him the class difference is simply too strong. You are crossing a societal line that should never be crossed. It's almost a doom prophecy for the relationship.
Niles ignores it entirely, of course. He basically says, "Watch me."
But it adds a fascinating layer of social commentary to the romance. Can true love actually conquer ingrained class differences? Ferguson firmly says no. Niles spends the rest of the season trying to prove him wrong.
Yeah.
But the fact that the writers acknowledge the uncomfortable power dynamic is significant.
And that perfectly brings us to the final chaotic arc of the season, the love triangle. But for once, it's not Niles' triangle. Finally, Frasier gets a truly complex romantic arc.
It is about time. And it is a fascinating battle between two very different philosophies of life, represented perfectly by two very different women.
So on one side, in the right corner, we have Claire, played by Patricia Clarkson.
Claire is arguably the most perfect match Frasier has ever had on paper in the entire run of the show. She is refined, she adores the opera, she is highly intelligent, she is cultured, she can casually read French poetry. She is essentially the female Frasier, but somehow far less pompous.
She is the absolute dream. She perfectly represents the curated life Frasier has been trying to build for 8 years. But to get to her, Frasier has to make a deal with the devil, or rather, the former high school prom queen.
Lana Gardener, played by the always wonderful Jean Smart.
Lana is, well, she's loud.
She is brash. She chain smokes. She shouts at her kids across the room. She loves sports and cheap beer. She is abrasive. She is fundamentally everything Frasier claims to hate in a person. But, crucially, she is Claire's good friend.
So they strike a deal. Lana agrees to help Frasier get Claire. But in exchange, Frasier has to help Lana's son, Kirby.
Kirby. Oh, we have to talk about Kirby.
Brian Klugman plays him. He is just this slack-jawed, apathetic teenager who desperately needs tutoring in history to graduate.
And Frasier, the snob, is forced to tutor him. The friction there is pure comedy gold. You have Frasier trying to passionately teach the nuances of the Federalist Papers to a kid who just wants to eat pizza, scratch himself, and go to the prom.
And Frasier sinks so incredibly low here, which just shows how desperate he is for Claire. He actually motivates Kirby by promising him a date with Roz.
He literally pimps out his own radio producer.
It is such a convoluted, ridiculous web of manipulation. He has to get impossible tickets to a Bruce Springsteen concert, give them to Kirby, so Kirby will agree to study, so Lana will put in a good word with Claire, so Frasier can finally get a date.
It is exhausting just to outline it.
Yeah.
But miraculously, it actually works. He gets the girl. By the two-part finale, Cranes Go Caribbean, he is the perfect girl. He is taking Claire on a romantic getaway to Belize. It should be his ultimate victory.
But it is Frasier. Victory is never that simple.
The trip is an unmitigated disaster from start to finish, and this brilliant setup brings the entire main cast together in one location.
Because Lana offers to drive Frasier and Claire to the airport, and she immediately causes a traffic accident, so they are incredibly late.
And when they finally get to Belize, it is just chaos.
Yeah.
Frasier loses his special luxury room. He loses his exclusive restaurant reservation.
Meanwhile, Martin is there too because he just invited himself along for the deep-sea fishing. And Niles and Daphne are there because Daphne completely misunderstood and thought it was a surprise romantic anniversary trip for them.
So the whole cast is stuck in Belize. Martin is happily catching fish. Niles and Daphne wander off and accidentally end up on a nude beach.
And they have photograph.
Right near a guy shooting with a massive telephoto lens. Again, the universe actively preventing them from just having a normal, peaceful, romantic moment. But the real substantive story in the finale is happening entirely inside Frasier's head.
Right, because he is there with Claire, the perfect woman. He is in tropical paradise, everything he wanted.
And he is not happy. Or at least he is deeply unsettled.
He has a dream. And in the dream, he looks over, and he isn't with Claire at all. He is in bed with Lana.
The loud, chaotic, smoking, swearing Lana. That is the massive cliffhanger. He wakes up from this dream sweating, terrified, and completely confused about his own desires.
And the season ends with him making a desperate phone call. And who does he call?
Lilith.
Of course it's the lift.
He calls his ex-wife, the frosty, analytical psychiatrist, for emergency advice. Because he's completely torn. He is caught between the woman he knows he should want, the perfect Claire, and the woman who actually challenges him and gets his blood pumping, the maddening Lana.
So as we wrap this deep dive up, what does this all actually mean for the legacy of the show? We started this season with Niles and Daphne finally getting together after 7 years of waiting. But we end it with Frasier more confused and lost than ever.
If you look at Season 8 as a complete whole, it acts as a bridge. It bridges the early chase years of the show to the later, more settled years. But to cross that bridge successfully, the writers had to blow up all the underlying fantasies. They blew up Niles' fantasy of the perfect, flawless Daphne. They blew up Frasier's fantasy of his career achievements being enough to sustain him. And in the finale, they're actively blowing up his lifelong fantasy of the perfect woman.
It is like the show is directly saying to the audience, look, reality is messy, deal with it. You cannot design your life the way you arrange a living room.
Exactly. The real aha moment for me studying this season is seeing how a sitcom actually survives, fulfilling its main premise. Everyone thought Frasier would just die in the ratings once Niles and Daphne got together, but it didn't. It survived by smartly shifting the primary conflict inward. It stopped being about external obstacles like secret crushes or bad timings or literal marriages and started being about internal obstacles, psychology, identity, deep insecurity.
Which keeps it fresh. It makes it so much more than just a joke machine. It makes it a show about real, flawed people.
It fundamentally matures the show.
So here's a final thought for you to chew on before we go. Frasier Crane is a world-renowned, highly educated psychiatrist. He spends his entire day telling other people how to live their lives. He claims to constantly crave refinement, high art, and absolute peace. So why, in his deepest, most unguarded subconscious, does he dream of Lana? Why does he actually crave the chaos?
It's a very provocative question.
Is it possible that his psychiatric expertise is actually his biggest personal blind spot? Maybe he doesn't actually want peace at all. Maybe he wants the fight. Maybe he needs the friction just to feel alive.
I think you might be right. He claims he wants the opera, but deep down, maybe he really wants the mosh pit.
That is Season 8, a season of Winnebago U-turns, fat suits, and profound identity crises. Thank you for taking this deep dive with us. We will see you next time.